Welcome, everybody. Today is the Tuesday, August 27th, 2024 meeting of the Johnson County Planning Commission. Do you want to do a attendance roll call?
Yes. Gregory Wolf.
Here.
David Paderas is absent. Kelly Rast.
Present.
Brad Miller.
Present.
Lindsay Grisay.
Present.
Fred Starrett.
Present.
Steve McGank.
Here.
Tim Orick is absent. Leslie Hind is joining us on Zoom.
Present.
Craig Connell is absent. Andrew Logan
Here.
and Kevin Hogan.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Wonderful. So now's the time in the Planning Commission meeting where we would allow public comment. Do we have any members of the public that wish to make a comment tonight? It does not appear so that we have people here in person or online. Is that correct? Online either?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. So then I think we'll move to the next portion of the meeting where we have any disclosures of conflicts of interest or ex parte communications by any of the board members. Does anybody have anything they wish to disclose? Hearing none, I go to the part of the agenda where we talk through additions or deletions. Do any of the Planning Commission members have additions or deletions that they would propose be made to the agenda tonight? All right, cruising right along. By hearing none, I think we'll move to the approval of the June 27th, 2024 meeting minutes. Do any of the commissioners have any modifications or concerns of those meeting minutes, or hearing if none, go ahead and make a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes.
Fred Starrett, I second.
All right, can I get all in favor say aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the meeting minutes are hereby approved. I think that would move us to the solid waste management plan update. Jay Leipzig, do you want to go ahead and introduce the topic and the speaker?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jay Leipzig, Planning, Housing, and Community Development Director. In your packet is the Solid Waste Management Plan 2024 5-year update. And I'm just going to read the opening paragraph that the Johnson County Solid Waste Management Plan is required by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment to be updated every 5 years as set forth by the Kansas statutes. These statutes call for the Johnson County Planning Commission to review the management plan for consistency with the Rural Comprehensive Plan as part of the update process. And so with us this evening, we have Trent Thompson, our Environmental Programs Manager, that will be going through the report, but we also have Charlie Hunt, the Director of Department of Health and Environment. Sorry, it's been a long day, is here with us as well this evening. I believe Charlie will be starting the presentation tonight.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much, commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Charlie Hunt. I serve as Director of the Department of Health and Environment. And I just want to provide a very brief overview of the Solid Waste Management Plan. So under state law, the county is required to develop a solid waste management plan through a Board of County Commissioners appointed Solid Waste Management Committee. The Solid Waste Management Plan has several different components. Mr. Thompson is going to go these in a little bit more detail, but very briefly, the plan has several critical components, including waste characterization. So this is an analysis of the types and quantities of waste that are generated within the jurisdiction, details on how waste is to be collected, including the frequency, the methods, and the entities that are responsible for collection, how the waste is processed and disposed of, information on recycling and waste reduction, including strategies for promoting recycling and reducing the overall volume of waste in line with state goals and sustainability, and finally, public education. And so we have programs in place within our department to educate the public about proper waste disposal, recycling, and waste reduction practices. The plan must be submitted to the Department of Health and Environment after the board approves it. Major updates to the plan are done every 5 years, and then there's also an annual review of the plan that we conduct and present those findings to the Board of County Commissioners. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Thompson to go over the plan in a little bit more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Good evening. I'm Trent Thompson. I'm the program manager for our solid waste and household hazardous waste programs within the Department of Health and Environment. This process took us quite a while. We started it about a year ago, and it has been a collaboration between our Solid Waste Management Committee, Johnson County Environmental staff, our consultants, Burns and Mack, and our direction from our management. We started the process by developing some goals and objectives for what we wanted to accomplish within the next 5 years in this plan. And our main overall goal statement is here, and I'll just go ahead and read that. To influence innovation in waste management through increased waste diversion and reduction strategies, diversion of organics, including food and others, from our landfills, broader usage of compost infrastructure, repurposing and recycling of construction and demolition materials, and commercial waste, and equity in all recycling across all sectors. So with that in mind, we developed these 5 objectives for our plan. Food diversion is a big one. Increased diversion of construction and demo, and then equitable access to recycling services geographically and within each sector, and then increased diversion in the commercial sector, and finally, community and private sector collaborations. I think you all are aware, but Mid-America Regional Council, along with Burns and Mack, completed a regional landfill capacity study. They finished that late last year. We incorporated a lot of those findings from our study into our plan. It was a very thorough study. This study also included all of our transfer stations, recycling, compost, municipal, commercial, and demo, and also our HHW facilities. The study did give us a great overview of where we're at with capacity, not only within our county, but within our region. And part of the study also helped us to see how much waste is flowing across the region. It's kind of a confusing slide, but if you look, orange is what's going into our landfills. It's the municipal solid waste. The blue is our recycling facility. Green is going to our compost. And then red is our commercial and demolition waste. So what we're trying to do is get an overview of how much we need to really divert. It helped us to really visualize how much was actually going into our landfills. So as part of our research and the feedback from our community, we actually had over 1,900 responses from our residents with our solid waste survey. And along with collaboration with our solid waste management committee, to help achieve these goals, we have identified 6 different sectors of waste generation we're going to focus on. And that will be single-family residential, multifamily residential, commercial, construction and demolition, household hazardous waste, and our own facilities as a county. I'll briefly go over the recommendations and priorities for each one of these sectors that we identified in the plan. So single family is our first one. Food waste diversion is very high on our list. About 20 to 25% of the composition of our landfill is food waste. And then some of our other priorities, we're looking at revising a code, our solid waste code, to require residential trash haulers to furnish a container for recycling. Currently, they have to offer this service, but they do not have to provide the container. So we're hoping to change that within this next plan. And also to continue our Recycle Right campaign. It's a really cool program that we do. We go from house to house with the permission of the townships, of course, and we actually inspect their recycling bins. What we're looking for is clean recycling. The recycling facilities do not want plastic bags. They do not want certain items because it does not work with their processes. So it's been highly successful. We're going to try to put as much resources into that program we can because we feel it really makes a difference. We're seeing about a 30 to 40% reduction in contamination in our residential recycling waste stream. Our multifamilies are our next one. Our high priority here is to develop and try to distribute example building codes that would require adequate enclosure space for both trash and recycling. What we're seeing is a lot of new builds, they don't have room to put a recycling bin in there. We think that's not a good thing. People in those facilities want to recycle, so we're going to help try to change that. And then also education, you're going to see that a lot. That is a high priority on all of our recommendations for this plan. Commercial recommendations, our high priority here is to work towards updating our solid waste code to actually license commercial haulers so we can better track data. We currently don't have a good way to track commercial waste and recycling at the point of generation. We are confident that this will help with that. And we'd eventually like to see, as a stipulation of that commercial license, is that they offer recycling as well on the commercial side. Also, along the commercial, we have a green business program that aids our businesses in becoming more sustainable. And we want to continue to dedicate resources and expand that program moving forward in the future. We think it's making a big difference. Our construction and demo, so this is when anything gets torn down or rebuilt or refurbished in our county. We'd like to move forward on leading by example on our county projects, like our new health services building. And then, of course, education and outreach on commercial and demolition recycling. We actually have a facility in our region that is actually actively recycling demolished materials. It's very good for our community. And then looking at wood processing options along the commercial and demolition side too, that we could compost quite a bit of that material if the county ends up developing a compost facility. Household hazardous waste, as most of you are aware, that was a big priority on our last plan, and we actually got it done. So it was a big achievement for our department and the county itself. We believe it's the best facility in the state, of course, and probably in the Midwest. So, but along those lines, we do have some recommendations for our new facility. It's running very successfully. It's a highly popular program. So we're continuing to develop ways to better serve the public and to keep those hazardous materials out of our landfill and out of our storm drains. We also want to try to improve on better resources for recycling electronic waste, some latex paint disposal options, and continue to improve operational efficiencies and promote education for that program. Part of our plan included a compost feasibility study. This was a high priority on our list. Burns and Mac did help with that. We also did a feedstock analysis of how much organic materials were actually being produced in Johnson County. So the study looked at several different compost processing systems that could possibly work for our county. And it was determined that an aerated static pile, it's a type of system that exists with different bays that you compost the material. This type of system uses a lot less footprint than a normal windrow type of operation and reduces odor and volatile organic compounds emissions, and it also composts at a quicker rate. So we're looking at around a 15-acre development for this project. Part of that, we did some interviews with our local composters. There's a very high demand for a compost facility here in Johnson County. We also saw that with our community survey engagement. So we're going to be planning and working on that for the future. So in summary, I went over all of the different sectors, so I can just go over that briefly. Obviously, our single family, we want to promote that food waste diversion. Our multifamily, we want to help develop and distribute the example building codes or adequate screening for recycling. And then commercial, we want to update the code to license commercial haulers so we can better track data. Commercial and demolition, we want to lead by example on county projects. And our household hazardous waste facility, as I mentioned, develop better electronic waste recycling around education for our community residents. And then facilities, one of our biggest goals is to try to develop a compost facility in the county. And with that, we'd like to answer any questions or clarify anything with our plan.
This is Lindsay Grisey. So, was there any talk of either having regulations around allowing composting things within the house, like at the house, like in the backyard, on a per site basis? And I wasn't sure if there were any regulations that require some sort of permit or pre-approval for a compost in someone's backyard in a single family.
I'm not sure per city on those regulations. I know a lot of those are different per township. Part of our plan is promoting backyard composting. It's the quickest, easy, and cleanest way to dispose of your food waste. So part of our plan will be a heavy lift on public education, and we will be looking at all of the city codes in conjunction with that training to make sure that we put that out to them correctly.
This is Commissioner Sterrett. How does the garbage disposal fit into this? I mean, I would guess most people, or a lot of people have a garbage disposal.
Garbage?
Garbage disposal, down the sink.
Oh, for food waste down the sink,
Yeah.
yes, that is still appropriate to do since it is getting biodigested or treated properly within the wastewater treatment system.
Got a question. Just Commissioner McGank, I have some property we have about 300 units of, it's all multifamily, but they're individually owned. And when they've changed where we had to start recycling, we used to have the properties, in large containers where the truck would pull up, but we had so many people coming in, dumping from outside the property that we went to individual, pickup out front of the side of each property. Well, once we had to start doing, having separate bins for recycling, it's been a nightmare actually. And we, just to try to, I'm looking at this thing here where you are required to have enclosures for both trash and recycling. Are they going to force the existing properties to go to single point pickups again where they have separate bins, or are they still going to allow us to do individual pickups in the multifamily property areas?
That's discussions we're going to need to have with property owners. That's part of that piece, the public-private partnerships that we're going to be developing as we look at those model codes, or specifically multifamily. I don't know how that will change per individual or per facility right now, but we will be researching that and making sure we try to get what people need and have the cities obviously help us with that process. So.
Okay.
This is Andy Logan. I think the packet said that landfill capacity could be maxed out as soon as like 2037.
Yes, the landfill capacity study I mentioned, there were several different scenarios in that, and that copy of that capacity study that the Mark group did with Burns and Mac is available online. There's about 9 different scenarios for that study. So the worst case scenario, if we don't change anything now, no more landfill space opens up, then that's where that shorter time frame comes in. As technology increases, as compaction rates increases, as diversion rates increases, that last case scenario has us out about 37 years. So as part of that slide I showed you, these are all the facilities within our region. So at some point, all of these outlying facilities do get some of our Johnson County waste. So we're already shipping some of our waste. It's all transportation driven. It's what's the cheapest, the closest. So Southeast Johnson County may take it to a transfer station across the line just because it's cheaper for them. So we are developing better ways along with these studies to actively try to figure out what that number is. So we're also doing a material flow analysis study with a group to find out where that point generation is to see if we can't help divert that as well. So yes, worst case could be 17 to 19 years. We don't believe that's what's going to happen. We believe it's going to be pushed out a lot further, along with the efforts of our plan that will help.
Thanks.
Okay, so the commissioners have any more questions? Okay, based on that, go ahead, Mr. Leipzig.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a couple of things to follow up on, the entire plan is available in its entirety. And there's a link in the staff report. And so I encourage not only you, but the members of the public that are watching this, if you'd like to see the full document that is available on that link as well. There is a recommendation on the second page of the memorandum for the Planning Commission, if you so choose to use that recommendation. but that is included in your packet this evening.
This is Andy Logan. I move that the Planning Commission adopt a finding to be forwarded to the Board of County Commissioners of Johnson County, Kansas. The Planning Commission finds the proposed Johnson County Solid Waste Management Plan to be consistent with the goals of the Rural Comprehensive Plan, which include 1, upholding environmental quality, 2, promoting citizen participation, 3, promoting local and regional coordination, 4, adopting a coordinated approach to development, and 5, providing adequate and cost-effective infrastructure and public services.
This is Commissioner Wolf. I second the motion.
All right, can we have a roll call for that?
Yep. Gregory Wolf,
Yay.
Kelly Rast.
Aye.
Brad Miller,
Yes.
Lindsay Grisay.
I abstain only because I just learned tonight that my company, Burns & McDonnell, did the report, and I just want to avoid the appearance of an impropriety.
Fred Sterrett, Steve McGank,
Aye.
Tim Orick, and I'll also note that Tim arrived at 5:49.
On record.
For the record. Leslie Hind,
Aye.
Andrew Logan,
Aye.
and Kevin Hogan.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate your efforts. Moving on to the Planning Commission Training Survey results and responses. Jay, do you want to go ahead and kind of lead off with that?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jay Leipzig. And I'll talk as Zoe as we load up the PowerPoint. But this is in your packet is a memorandum from Zoe Brown, our planning staff, that summarizes the survey results that we administered about our previous meeting, asking about potential training topics and when you would like to have those training topics presented to you. So excited to present this. I think it's great research, great information. So we appreciate the feedback from you all. And Zoe has a quick PowerPoint that she's going to run through, as well as talk through the memo with you as well.
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. I'm Zoe Brown. Thank you all so much for completing the survey back in June regarding the future Planning Commission trainings. Tonight, I'll be giving a summary of the survey responses, and then we'll be asking you for a bit of direction on the next month's topic. So the intent of the survey was to gauge the preferred format for training, assess which planning topics seem most relevant to the Commission, and develop a tentative schedule for future trainings. First of all, as a new staff member, I really wanted to get a feel for why you all are interested in planning. So the first 2 questions were open-ended. Number 1 was, why is planning important to you? And number 2 was, what initially interested you in becoming a Planning Commission member? In these questions, there were several common themes that emerged. The themes had to do with shaping development and future growth in the county, community involvement and service, and seeing the county prosper and succeed. So instead of including each of your individual responses in the memo or in the PowerPoint here, I took the responses for those 2 questions and put them in a word cloud generator so we can visualize those common themes. So growth and development are the big ones. They're the obvious ones. But the words role, privilege, and serve also really stood out to me. To me, that shows the pride you all take in being Planning Commission members and the level of dedication you guys have to the community and to the democratic process. The other words that stood out to me were prepare, direction, and generations, which are all very forward-thinking words. And as planners, we're trying to think ahead and address potential problems before they arise. And it reminds me of a quote that says, "Success is the residue of planning." We aren't just planning for the current county residents, but for the future generations. So the planning and preparing that we're doing now is really setting the county up for success in the future. So we thank you for your commitment and service to the county as we do this important work. And hopefully the topics that we cover in the upcoming months can help us in this mission. So that's kind of the big picture stuff. But getting into the specifics, question 5 had to do with the format for training. And in the responses, as well as in the last meeting, you all came to the consensus that you'd rather have regularly scheduled meetings where topics are presented as agenda items, and staff is totally good with that as well. So the topic with the most interest was city and county collaboration. This was followed by infrastructure planning, and then rural planning and collaboration between governmental departments were tied for third. So these topics are what we plan to focus on for the rest of the year. A few other things that came up were, so there was an open-ended question, like if something wasn't mentioned, what would you guys want to hear about? The maintenance of existing developments was mentioned, subdivision plans, and CUPs. So hopefully we can work those in. There's plenty of ways we can do that because the topics are pretty open-ended. So here are the topics broken down, and this is also in your memo. It might be a little easier to read in the memo. So for the next commission meeting, we're going to discuss city and county collaboration. This topic is very broad and open for interpretation. So I'll share a few ideas that I had that I kind of talked to Sean about, and then you all can use that as a jumping off point to discuss the direction of what you guys want to see in the next training. So the things that came to mind for me were to talk about the urban fringe policy areas in our comprehensive plan, city comments on county projects, and anything we receive, we send out to the cities for comment, and then the jurisdiction differences between cities and counties. For example, talking about the process of annexation, because that comes up a lot. So I'd love to open it up and hear you all's thoughts about what you're curious about when it comes to city and county collaboration, and what ideas you guys have for us to cover with this topic next month. There's also a schedule in the back of your memo that you can take home.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Grisey. I think these 3 topics sound spot on. Does anybody else have any other additional thoughts on topics?
This is Commissioner Wolf. I'd be curious to know about infrastructure cooperation, in particular, roads, and services that we provide, and how that meshes together, so to speak.
Yeah.
This is Sean Penley, planning staff. That's a good point. We had talked about this a little bit earlier as staff, trying to think about what specific areas in discussion. And Jay and I had talked about that. That's a common theme. We have coordination with different cities on interlocal agreements or any projects, especially dealing with infrastructure improvements. And that often comes up with maybe road improvements or just any other infrastructure improvement. But that's a good point. We could, we've had, if you recall in the past, we've had some representatives from the city of Overland Park come out and talk about their future street plan. That's often a really common topic I think we should be doing with all the cities. And then just any other future plans for improvements, but infrastructure, that's a really good one that we can try to coordinate with both our public works department in the county and the city's jurisdiction as well.
This is Commissioner McGank, and I would absolutely be interested in that. And I live on Black Bob Road, so I'm experiencing this city-county coordination thing right now. I'm in the county. It seems like the city is taking precedent and whatever they say goes. And we really don't have any say-so because we live in the county, and it's extremely frustrating to me. And I know equally to Kevin because he lives right up the street from me. And so, yeah, I'd be very interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, this is Kelly Ross. I would have a question, and I don't know if this would fall on that too, because when I went to the Overland Park City Council meeting, and it was about that development that's going up at 179th Street in Metcalf. And first time ever, I saw a traffic study that came in with some bad numbers, and which I was first like, wow. They had said that the increased incidence of wrecks at the off-ramp of 169 and 100% would increase 66%. And it's mostly because of that bridge. So it was everybody was on the same page that the infrastructure for the traffic with putting a hotel, a convention center, all the retail spots on that corner, the infrastructure did not meet. And their answer to that was, well, you'd have to build it first before we could fight to get the bridge changed. And so I would love to know how you reconcile that, because I guess that, what it sounded like to me was there's no options for that bridge. The way it's built into the rock, and like it wouldn't be an easy fix in the way it's a really blind spot. So it was more like, okay, that's just way too big to even consider doing anything with, although we all acknowledge that that's a hazard with this project. But that was their answer, was pass the project. When it gets to the point, push comes to shove, then somebody's going to deal with it. That's not real forward thinking, in my opinion. So I would love to know how that falls in and who should have been, like how you would stop something like that if that's the mindset. So.
Fisher asked by Jay Leipzig. One thing I would say, and this is not a general, really a comment about that specifically, but I would say that, as we develop our regulations and our subdivision regulations that are coming up, I think to really look at refining the nexus for development and when decisions are made. That is something, frankly, our current regulations are somewhat dated. They need to be, those particular parts need to be updated. We've done some work there, but I think to look at it holistically, that will be a key component of the subdivision regulations as we move forward and figure out, whether they're development agreements, for example, between the city and the county, or what type of mechanism that we would have, what that would look like. We're still kind of exploring some ideas. But I think that is an arena that we really need to, as we move into the future, that will become more and more important over time. Whereas, even 20 years ago, the real focus of the plan was maintaining the rural character and rural planning type concepts, which is still very important. But I think the infrastructure piece and the city and county collaboration is going to become more important as the area continues to grow, especially like, for example, Stillwell and Overland Park and some of those issues. So we have to be able to have very refined processes for how that is done, and ensuring that what we're doing is consistent with what the cities are doing, and that we work together. Because I think, and that communication process needs to be formalized.
Yeah. Ms. Kelly Ross, and I don't know, they kind of made it also sound pushed off that that's more of a federal project, maybe because of the highway, or they made it sound like that would require federal funding. I don't know. It was just very disappointing that that was the answer, but yet everybody was in agreement this was a hazard and this was going to be a problem, but we're just going to turn a blind eye to it right now. The other thing that I'd like to know statistics on, and I've heard the statistics, I don't know if it's true or not, but I would love validation. I'm hearing that pretty much 99% of anytime a developer brings an application, to this point, it pretty much gets passed. I would love to kind of know what the push is sometimes with, development, because I've been to enough meetings where the residents are very, they're very common sense. They know that development has to happen. They just want common sense development. And every time I tell somebody that they're putting a hotel in a convention center at the corner of 179th and Metcalf, they're like, way out there? What? Nobody can believe those. But it's just, and when I go to some of these meetings, there's not one person for it. And it was almost even comical because at the city council meeting, they talked about trees. They gave an award and merit for Arbor Day. They talked about, needing more housing and stuff. And then we have the whole meeting where everybody, pretty much talked against it and said, we'd like to see other things. We know it, development's going to happen, whatever. They just still pass it with no grounds of rationale of why. So I'd kind of like to sometimes know, why does the developer have so much upper hand? At least that's the way it looks when you go to these meetings, because there's a lot of really good, valid rationale. And I don't think residents are always being completely, they're not digging their feet and, their heels in and saying absolutely no. They're wanting what's appropriate, and they're far more appropriate than what we're hearing from, the members that are passing it. So I'd love to kind of, I don't know if you can get someone to come and talk and say, why? Like, how do you sit and listen to all of that? And even the applicant of the developer, he couldn't even answer half the questions. Overland Park Planning was, in my opinion, you guys do way better than them. They were pretty pathetic with answering a lot of the questions. but yet it still passed. So I think it would help to understand that.
Well, and
That
this, Lindsay Grisey here, I think one of the struggles maybe that you're kind of keen into, Kelly, is that was a project that was right on the border, right? So there's the border of Overland Park and Johnson County, was right there. So maybe kind of to this training topics or ideas, it's like, hey, are there kind of ways that project will impact right next to it, Johnson County roads and development and things like that. So maybe on those type of projects, there should be increased collaboration, or maybe just understanding what is that collaboration between Johnson County and Overland Park, because that project is right there on the border. Sorry, was there somebody else who was going to speak up?
Tim Orick. I guess following up on that, I think you almost need another level of collaboration here because everybody's forgetting about the state and KDOT's role. And particularly you talk about US 69, anytime you're at an interchange, that's a KDOT deal. And so we really need, and KDOT's got a planning department, obviously. Now they don't do planning like our staff does planning, but they are constantly forecasting. There's a lot of talk right now about a link between DeSoto and I-35 on the western part of the county, which is going to be a huge impact if that moves forward on the development of the entire west side of the county. So we really need to get that KDOT part of the equation in there, particularly as it relates to anything having to do with the state highways or
This is Sean Penley, planning staff. That's a good point too. We understand there's definitely a transportation network plan that's actually just starting work between county and different cities in Johnson County and KDOT and their consultant. That is a project that will, once that study is complete and they have the recommendations for that, we anticipate there will be an update to the current plan in the county. But that'll probably be next year at soonest. But that will absolutely be a topic that we would bring forward to the Planning Commission for an update, and then what the recommendations are moving forward. So there will be specific topics related to more regional transportation and infrastructure improvements, but that's a good point. We always need to consider the larger regional areas as well.
Yeah, Commissioner Grisey, I think that would be, again, trying to focus on improving process rather than kind of casting stones at something that happened. But if there's a project that is going to have an impact on some other development. So let's say there's a Johnson County proposed development that may impact KDOT or something like that. It would seem like they should maybe have a voice at the table, at least to inform the zoning department within Johnson County about the impacts to that project. And maybe there's something the Planning Commission could do that would encourage those type of voices to get brought to the table when considering a particular application. I'm sorry, go ahead.
This is Commissioner Starrett. I'm kind of new to this still, and I guess I've been here a year. So I'm just curious in this training that we're going to do to understand how we as a planning commission would be involved in the collaboration. I mean, who's at the table literally? Is it staff or is it the planning commission or who?
Commissioner Starrett, we are still kind of refining those details in terms of what that would look like in terms of the training. I will tell you, just as kind of a summary of some of the points I've heard, I do think, KDOT, that's an important component that we can't overlook. And as Sean had mentioned, they're working on their transportation study. But I think we could also have KDOT provide some preliminary projections. Would be very, I think, interesting for you all to kind of see some of that in terms of what's happening over the western part of the county and looking at that. And then when I mentioned, formalizing communications, that's where having these procedures outlined in our subdivision regulations that's very important. And working with KDOT, working with the surrounding city and having those this communication channel is formalized, I think the more of that type of thing that we can do, that it's written actually into our regulations, I mean, that way it's there for perpetuity as well. But I think that's important. I think in terms of this training topics, we'll have to dig into that more in terms of what we could do. I do think though it will be a kind of a primary focus as we move certainly in the next couple of years. Also with our consultant, and I can go into that more here in just a bit, but on the subdivision regulations has quite a bit of experience in that type of work, and that was one of the real key strengths that they have as well. They've exercised in the past too.
So, I'm sorry, chain of command then, does these regulations that you're talking about working on, is that like these other things that we've seen where they would come here, we would consider them and then make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners?
Yes, although that will be done, Commissioner Jay Leipzig again. Yes, although that will be done in sections. That's kind of a long-term project. And so we're still figuring out exactly what that will look like with the steering committee and the technical advisory committee. But yeah, there will be meetings in the future about that. That's an 18-month project, estimated 18 months. So there'll be several steps kind of along the way, kind of updating you on what some of those preliminary recommendations are, what that would look like. And then a chance for you to take a look at that text and review it and make comments on that too.
Commissioner McGank, I just recently going through this experience with living in the county and then having the city doing improvements. It seemed to me that everything had been decided by the city. I assume they're footing most of the bill for it, and that the county or the people living in the county had really very little, if no say-so, to what was happening there. And when we did say something, well, this has already been decided. So we were basically told that this is a city project. We're just here to make sure you get some money for the land they're taking from you. But you have no say-so in sidewalks, where they're going, berms, nothing else. Turning areas, how much of the land you're going to, nothing. I mean, it was all pre-decided. And that was really frustrating to me, that we living in the county, and I didn't understand, well, I know I don't live in the city, so you don't really care what I have to say, but I do live in the county, and why hadn't the county had more of a say-so of what's happening on an artery that's going, that's in both, jurisdictions? I just don't understand the process. I would love to understand more of it, and why doesn't the county seem to have more of a say in what's happening?
And this is Commissioner Crusay, kind of gets into, I think, about maybe a year ago, we spoke about notification requirements. I mean, I think maybe to your point, if the city was doing a project, but it was going to impact you as a Johnson County resident, are the residents in Johnson County getting a notice, or is the notice requirement only applied to the city members? I would just be kind of curious about under what venue would a county resident voice support or concern about a project?
I mean, I get Commissioner Sterrett again. I mean, and right now we're talking about a specific situation apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But if we got situations where we got a road like State Line Road comes to mind for me, Missouri and Kansas, I mean, it would seem that if the county's in the game and ought to be
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes. Well, sorry that Commissioner Crusay, is there anybody else that would like to speak? Sorry, we kind of went a little bit around that topic, but.
This is Commissioner Wolf. The other topic I'd be interested in, and this is kind of touched on by what we had the presentation on, is looking at the resources the city and the county has. How many landfills do we need? Are we coordinating with the cities? I'm using that as an example. There are other resources out there. How do we coordinate that so that we're not building 3 hospitals, using as a silly example, right next to each other, right? So, how do we make sure that we are taking advantage of the opportunities that both the municipalities are doing and the county is doing, and even our neighboring counties, so that we are, you know, being judicious in the resources we have and using them efficiently.
All right, Commissioner Grisey, so I think that, do you have any other questions or need feedback from us in any other way to help you?
Ms. Keller, you did a great job. Excellent job.
I second that. I think now is the time in the agenda where we will go through the director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jay Leipzig, just as kind of an additional add-on that, the previous topic, I think our goal in the future generally is to be more proactive about projects. I think, you know, especially as the county continues to grow, I think it's important that we continue to do that, especially to have a seat at the table, so to speak, but certainly be and formalize those communication channels on projects and when they're brought forward. So you'll have a lot of discussion about that here in the next 18 months. The Board of County Commissioners actions, we just recently, I was going to mention, last night there was a public hearing with the city of Lenexa for the proposed homeless services center that was recommended by the Lenexa Planning Commission for denial. So don't know the status of that, but I know that there's the community's been kind of watching that project closely. So I wanted to mention that. It's been a long evening yesterday. The other item to mention are zoning and subdivision regulations. The contract has been approved. Negotiated contract amount with Clarion and Associates, which is a planning consulting firm out of Denver, Colorado, that specializes in this type of work. They most recently worked on the comprehensive plan for the city of Overland Park and the framework OP plan, which I think will be a great advantage to us as we work through this process. So I already have relationships with other cities, are very familiar with this area as well, and how the regulations need to fit together between a county and a city perspective. Also, Clarion, one of their subcontractors is Olson and Associates, which works here locally in the Kansas City metropolitan area too. Have a lot of experience. They've done a lot of work at New Century Airport as well, so they're familiar with planning issues from the county perspective, also the cities as well. So, and they have great graphic capabilities as well. So we're looking forward to working with them. That contract was just approved last week. And so the next steps are to kind of formalize the committees, the kickoff dates, and then put together a calendar as we move forward here for the next 18 months on that project. We'll have a better idea, but we that was approved by the Board of County Commissioners, so we're pleased about that. That certainly will be, you'll have other opportunities in the future to talk about that, and as we go through a variety of topics. That concludes my report, Madam Chair. Fairly short this evening.
Lovely. So now we'll move on to asking any of the commissioners if there's any old business or new business that they would like to bring to the group for discussion or maybe future action. All right, hearing none, I think we can adjourn unless anybody else. Oh, okay, Mr. Leipzig.
Madam Chair, one thing I did want to point out for the public as well, that in your packet is an article, or actually two articles that were provided to you by Joyce Whittier, I believe, that was included in the packet this evening as well, and they're posted on the website too.
Perfect. Thank you for sending those, Joyce and Mr. Leipzig. So with that, can I get a motion to adjourn? And a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Leslie. We're hereby adjourned.